Hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I hope I am audible and I hope I'm live. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I'm a little jittery. Please excuse me. But yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I think this was one such platform that I wanted to kind of create and help the student community and job seekers to be successful in their lives. And so I've been doing it quite a bit now, I think in the last couple of months, I would say. But yeah, I think it's been a journey for me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruchika, and I am a recruiter with Microsoft. I have been a recruiter for about 4 years now in Microsoft, but overall, I come with 9 years of experience. My day job involves, kind of interacting with the student community day in and day out, and that's what I do for a living. So, which is why I think it gives me a lot of energy. I come with a lot of passion, and I think over the years, because I was interacting with the student community so much, I realized that I need to, create somewhere where I can help as many as possible. So this is just a small attempt in that direction. And on that note, we have a special guest with me today, and this is the first time that I'm doing a live chat. Um, but yeah, I'm like super excited, to have this guest with me. But I think without further ado, let me actually add him to this stream. Hi, Pratik.
Hey Ritika, how are you?
I'm doing good. So before I hand it over to Pratik, I think I have a quick introduction about Pratik. Pratik Mohapatra is a program manager with Microsoft Teams. He loves to create an impact by understanding and solving customer problems. He believes in the power of networking, and he has efficiently utilized the ability to network to help him land not one but two internships at his dream company. He was the 2018 Imagine Cup winner and has done his college and country proud by being the first Indian to win the coveted title from its very inception. On that note, Pratik, I hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Ruchika, for having me here. It's definitely interesting to be here on the other side, going and telling students about my experience. I think about 2 years back, I never thought that I would be here. So I think that's how time changes, and that's how much probably hard work also matters. So as you rightly said, a brief introduction about myself is I'm currently a program manager in Microsoft Teams in the area of activity feed and notifications. Prior to this, I was a summer intern in Microsoft itself in the core service engineering org. And before that, I was in certain companies like Zomato and Deloitte. And I've always been passionate about solving hard problems. Especially, I think one of the biggest platforms to do that was Imagine Cup and the Microsoft AI for Good Area Challenge. So I think that helped. And that helped me get where I am today, Ruchika. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Pratik. So I think without further ado, and before I kind of get into what we have lined up, I do want to say I think Pratik has a very inspiring story. And for those of you who don't know him, I definitely recommend going on his LinkedIn profile. He has some amazing content there that he has shared. But his journey has been very inspirational. I think for me personally, I have been a part of that journey in some shape and form, and I have kind of drawn a lot of inspiration from him. So, on that note, I'm going to share my screen quickly because I thought that I think what better way to do this than a visual, PPT, and I'm wondering why this is not showing up. Give me 1 second. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, Ruchika, we can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Pratik, let's talk about Imagine Cup. And
Yeah.
Imagine Cup for you did not happen once; it happened twice, in fact.
Yeah.
And the second round, you actually ended up winning it. So, do you want to talk about
Yeah.
more about what happened in Imagine Cup?
Sure.
The app that you developed, and what was the motivation and inspiration behind that?
Yeah. So I think Imagine Cup was very interesting. So I think one of my mentors within Microsoft told me that, hey, Pratik, if you want to make a mark at Microsoft, Imagine Cup is the way to go. Right. And back then, Imagine Cup was a very, very competitive competition, right? It was a competition where, a lot of students come and a lot of talented students come in. It's very hard to get through even the first round. And I remember when I think the same team that you're showing on screen, it's the first year and the second year and third year that we went. And I still remember when we went in for the first year, we qualified in the regionals, but we couldn't really win in the finals, right, of India, right, the teams that. So how it worked before, let me give you some context, right? So before, prior to the changes that have happened to Imagine Cup now, how it worked is you would submit your ideas on the Imagine Cup website, you would get shortlisted, you would get called to Delhi. In Delhi, probably you'll be judged, and then the top three from Delhi would go to Seattle to represent their idea, right? And that was the format before. So I think we went as a team. My two wonderful teammates here. I think we all worked very hard, but we just couldn't go forward and get into the top three, right? And that was very disappointing, right? Because we had done all that we could. We had done the research, validation, pain points, identification, everything, right? Everything in a capacity, but we weren't just good enough because the other teams were just better, right? And then we came back and we did a RCA, right, or root cause analysis of probably where we went wrong and where we could have done better. And what we identified is we did not validate our problem that much, right? So think of it this way, right? I know that you're hungry and I give you food, right? But I do not exactly know why you're hungry, right? And that's exactly the problem, right? We did not know what the problem was. We probably knew what the problem was, but we didn't know enough about the problem, right? And one thing I've learned in Microsoft is if you got to be a good engineer, product manager, whatever it is, you got to understand the problem, right? And once you understand the problem, 90% of the solution is in front of you, right? And that's what we did different in the next year. We went forward and identified a very new problem, I would say, in the medical field of counterfeit medicines. So we built around a solution that would help detect users' counterfeit medicines, right? And I think we did that. We used a lot of Azure technologies. We made our solutions better. We improved it. Then we went on to Delhi. We won it in Delhi. Then we went on to Redmond, and we won it in the big data category, right? So I think the two or three key learnings for me is the first thing is get an amazing team, right? I think without a team it's impossible to win an Imagine Cup, right? I wouldn't even have won it if not Chidruk and Srihari, those two teammates that you see, right? They did a splendid job in terms of doing the core engineering work, design work, all of that, right? You really need manpower, right? The second thing is, as I rightly said, is you need to understand the problem and empathize with the user. A lot of people don't do that, and they just go forward and solve anything and everything they can get hold of without empathizing with the user. So I think that's one big learning that we had. And lastly, be very data oriented than being instinct oriented, right? So I think we went forward, spoke to doctors, spoke to pharmacies, actually identified that how many medicines were sold counterfeit. We also identified that one out of every four medicines sold in the world are counterfeit. So we were able to quantify or able to validate what we're saying with a certain amount of degree of data, which was lacking in the previous competition, right? So if I just say today, we have a lot of users in teams who love the product. Vis-a-vis, if I say we have 100 million users who use the product with a rating of 4.5, it sounds better. So suddenly people start believing you, right? So I think that was important. So yeah, that was my experience in Imagine Cup. Yeah.
Thanks, Pratik, for sharing that. I think moving on, I think Imagine Cup brought you a lot of fame and recognition. And I think the next picture rightly points out the fame and recognition, which is the one that you had with
Yeah.
Satya.
Yeah.
Um, how did you handle, so much of recognition? And I know when Imagine Cup happened, right after that, you were kind
Yeah.
of catapulted into,
Yeah.
everywhere. Like you were
Yeah.
keynote speaker, you were talking in different platforms. I think there was
Yeah.
even a newspaper article that you had shared
Yes.
on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened like after that? What was your journey? How did you handle so much of fame and recognition? And do you want to talk about your experience?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a lovely question, right? Because I'll tell you honestly, what I see in youngsters these days, right? I'm not nitpicking or I'm not putting out any negativity out there, right? But I'm just saying that a lot of people, once they get an internship, once they win a competition, they just go forward and lose that, right? They lose from where they came from, right? And that's extremely crucial to understand that at the end of the day, you started from here, you went up, but you got to remember where you started from, right? Because people will reach out to you, students will reach out to you. In fact, I'm very disappointed with myself that so many students reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not able to help, right? Because of so much work commitments, and it's really frustrating, right? It's not because I don't want to do that, but it's just that I don't have the time. But I think what I'm trying to say here is there were a lot of commitments, right? I think newspaper articles, in fact, so certain stories. I had to reach out to certain people. People were reaching out to me, but I just told myself every day that I have come from where I have come from zero. Right, I started from zero. I really started. By the way, my father is not even in the IT industry. Right, he's completely in the sales marketing in an automobile company, and I started from zero. Right, and the one good thing that my parents, my sister, my friends around me have taught that always be humble, and no matter how much you achieve, right? And what better example than Satya himself, right? Who I can be very honest, when I met Satya, it was like meeting anyone else. It was just like meeting you, right? He was so humble. There was no sign that he's a CEO. There was no sign that, oh my God, I'm meeting someone so big, right? No sign at all. He was so grounded, so nice. And I think that's important, Ruchika, right? You can go forward, get Microsoft tomorrow. I can probably get another company tomorrow. None of that matters if you can't be humble, if you can't respect people, right? So I think what I tell myself every day on a daily basis, right? I mean, I appreciate God for what I have. But beyond that, I think I always tell myself that I started from zero and I'm just at 0.1, and there's a long way to go, right? And in the industry, what so happens is the person who you think tomorrow or yesterday was just someone else is tomorrow your boss, right? And Ruchika, I think you explained that so well in your article, where your current manager was the one interviewing you, right? So I think that's how corporate works, right? It's a magical world where a person who you never have thought your junior, your senior in college would suddenly become your manager, right? So I think it's just good to give back to the community. It's also good to be grounded and humble, but at the same point of time, don't brag, don't show off. There's a fine line between doing that, right? I also see a lot of potential winners, a potential lot of people within Microsoft, within large companies, go forward and help others, right? But then there's a certain category of people who would probably exploit that, right? They would say that, I'll train you, I'll make you big, so on and so forth, right? So you as an individual also, right, need to know where is the fine line to draw between the good people and the bad people, right? And who to follow, who not to follow, who to be influenced by, and who not to be influenced by. Remember, if that person is in XYZ company, and that's, let's say, a large company, and he's saying to do XYZ, that might have worked for him or her, but might not work for you, right? So that's very important to understand, that everyone's path to success or path to the glorious companies is different vis-a-vis following a straight path. Ruchika, I mean, I can tell people you got to do this for Imagine Cup, but trust me, if they follow the same path, they still won't win Imagine Cup because times have changed, things have changed, and that's how life is, right? So I think just to be humble, to be grounded, saying to yourself that you started from zero, you got to 0.1, but there's a lot to go. That just kept me grounded, Chika.
Thanks, Pratik. I think as you talk about pathways and finding
Yeah.
your own path, I think the next topic that comes to my mind, and
Yeah.
it's something that has been I'm so proud
Yeah.
that not just me but my team has been a part of your
Yeah.
journey. And obviously, I
Yeah.
have Pratik's permission to share
Yeah.
the messages that Pratik had shared with me about 3 years back. So,
Yeah.
so happened, and I think Pratik reached out to me about in 2018, right after he had won the Imagine Cup. These are the messages that I took a screenshot of, and I thought of sharing
Yeah.
with everybody. Um, at that point in time, I think I was in Redmond. I was there for a
Yeah.
visit, and I get this message from Pratik.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was nothing. It just said that, hi, ma'am, I've recently, very simple and short, and he attached the article that was written on him, and I was so excited when I read that message. I was like, wow. I mean, you can actually see that, I'm like, oh, this is absolutely amazing. This is great. Congratulations, and all of that. And I immediately took a screenshot of it and I started sending it to my team saying that, hey, this kid has reached out to me and he won the Imagine Cup. And I remember, I think by the end of the week, they said, hey, he reached out to us as well. So
Yeah.
for me, I think what I loved was the passion
Yeah.
with which Pratik was following up with everybody, in
Yeah.
my, and I think you came with a lot of clarity. Like you knew where you wanted to, go, or where
Yeah.
you wanted to see yourself, and that I think helped, you kind of carve your own path as you went along.
Yeah.
But you want to talk about you navigating your way
Yeah.
into Microsoft?
Sure. Yeah, this is a lovely question. And for all the people who keep asking me, how did I become a PM? How did I become a PM? So I think the way I look at it, Ruchika, I think the world is such that no matter how much good work you're doing, there is always a fine line between highlighting it and over highlighting it, right? So, I see a lot of people do amazing work, fantastic work, win competitions, get certificates, so on and so forth. I see them post on LinkedIn, so on and so forth, right? But you got to understand that LinkedIn as a platform probably has 100, 200 million users, right? So if you don't target the right person, it's no point, putting it out there in the platform, right? So your group or the target audience needs to be extremely right. I mean, if you look at Google, for example, Ruchika, it does so much for search engine optimization or ad optimization because it needs to personalize the content for you to click it and for Google to earn the highest amount of revenue, right? Now, I knew, Ruchika, that, it said in your title that, hey, you're a university recruiter at Microsoft. I was like, oh my God, wow, I got to get there. I really want to be a part of Microsoft. And I think what happened was, I reached out to you. I reached out to a couple of folks at Redmond. I reached out to your colleagues as well. And I think my only motto or thinking was that, I want to know the process. And I want to know, or I want to get recognized at this platform where, I have done so much work. And probably if the university recruiting team sees me and gives me an opportunity, it will be great, right? And let me tell you one thing, right, Ruchika, and this is where a lot of students' questions will also get answered, right? A lot of people do certificates, those are not bad, right? But where I thought I standed out was the fact that I was the only Imagine Cup winner across the world. I mean, of course, with my teammates, but it was so big that I knew that I had the liberty to go forward and message you and tell you that, hey, I'm being on news.microsoft.com. I think I'm differentiating enough to be a potential candidate to be looked into by the recruiting team. And that so happened, right? So I reached out to you, I reached out to your colleagues, and they were very kind enough to understand that, hey, this person wants to do something with more problem solving and is really, really passionate about product management. And I kept following on. I still remember the follow-ups and all of that. But I think that was because I was so interested in it, right? I see a lot of people follow up once, twice, thrice, and they leave it, right? But for me, it was like I want to get into product management, and this is the company that's empowering people to achieve more with the mission that I want to align myself with that mission. And I see myself spending years in this company just doing that in the mission, right? So I think that's what worked, Ruchika. And of course, when I spoke to a lot of Microsoft colleagues, I mean, it's not about just speaking to you or the HR recruiting team. I had to know if the company or what the company does suits me, right? So even before contacting the HR or the HR team, I had contacted people within Microsoft, right, just to establish and understand what is the role like, what do product managers do, so that when you ask me a question, why PM, I have an answer to that, right? Vis-a-vis just reaching out to you and saying that, hey, I want a job, right? That's what a lot of people do. So when I ask them that, why do you want to be a PM? They say that, no, I just like it. I mean, that's not a good answer, right? I mean, I reached out, I saw what they're doing, I saw that they're, solving hard problems, all of that, and that gave me the clarity that I want to be a PM, and it so happened. So yeah.
Thanks, Pratik. I think you definitely inspired us. And yes, there was a lot of follow up that happened from your end. But,
Yeah.
as you say, I think if you want something, you really have to put your heart and soul into it,
Yes.
and well, you're
Absolutely.
here. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
great. I think switching gears now, one of the things that, a lot of people are currently facing is,
Yeah.
the imposter syndrome. And this is something that has become a way of life for a lot of people, because we are working virtually, we are away from our folks. There is no face to face happening, and so that that feeling sinks in, that am I even worthy of being here? And it happens to me a lot of times, even within
Yeah.
Microsoft, with what I do. I question myself, if do I am I deserving of this, or what if my manager thinks, or finds out that I'm not a good employee, and tells me to leave. But did that happen to you, considering that you had so much of fame and recognition? You were the Imagine Cup winner. Obviously, you interned in Microsoft. Did that ever occur to you, that there was an added pressure for you to prove yourself in some shape and form, and maybe be the best intern, if there was a competition, and be like the best intern out
Yeah.
there? Was
Yeah,
that something?
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question, Ruchika. And I think, to be really honest, it was there, right? During my internship, during my 6 month internship as well. And, for me, I think it got even more harder when I got into Teams, right? So Teams is this beautiful new product where people are going forward, messaging, doing video chats, so on and so forth. And it's a very critical real-time product, right? So you do not have any room for error, right? Just imagine disrupting a service in Teams, and probably the whole Microsoft or the whole community within Teams will be like, who's this new kid who spoiled everything, right? So it was a lot of pressure, right? And to be really honest, there were times at which, and I wouldn't deny this, right? Any company, right? Not just Microsoft, right? From university to any company that you go, Ruchika, it's a transition, right?
Yeah,
Just like the way you go from 12th to college, it's a transition. Just like the way you go from 10th to 11th, it's a transition. Even from university to work, it's transition, right? And no matter how good our education system is, Ruchika, it does not prepare you for as much as corporate, right?
yeah,
Of course, it does prepare you, let's say 50, 60, 70%, but that 10 to 20% is what you got to prepare for, right? And that, trust me, unless you go, you experience it, you learn about it, you won't know, right?
yeah,
I still remember when I went to Deloitte as an intern. I actually went forward. I'm just this outreach guy. I'm just like to talk to everyone. What I did accidentally is I reached out, I went down to a partner's cabin and I opened the door, right? And the partner's like, man, why are you doing that, right? You got to make an appointment with my EA and all of that, right? And I was like, oh, damn, that's how the system works, right? So I didn't know all that, right? Because I was very new. I was just a kid down the block. I was like, man, I won't talk to partner, because everyone was like, partner is the big thing here in Deloitte, partner. So I was like, man, let me go talk to a partner. And the partner really was angry, upset, man, I'm in a call. How can you just come in like that? And then I realized that in every system, there are certain dynamics to be followed,
yeah,
right? Or certain rules to be looked at. And then those rules are not established to demon and, belittle anyone. They're established for certain protocols to manage time better, to organize the calendars better, right? So I think for me, the syndrome definitely did kick in. And there was always a lot of pressure being an Imagine Cup winner to deliver, to perform. Yeah, and it's healthy competition, right? If you hear one intern, let's say, he got to the next level faster, or you got to the next level slower, right? It's always going to be there. But I think what helped me at those points of time is just to hold my nerve and get through, right? Of course, Ritika, there is this learning in any company, and you're not the best, right? No one is the best in the world. You have to get to there, and even if you get there, there'll someone be better than you for sure, right? So I think I just told myself I got to learn every day, have a growth mindset, work hard, also ensure that I am ramping up on the system. And Ruchika, for me, I think when I got into the internship, I think a lot of people say they had a lot of fun. They had this. I mean, I did have a lot of fun, but at this, same point of time, it was for me. How do I get a pre-placement offer? How do I convert? It's. I mean, though you can have fun, but you are one out of, let's say, 200, 300 that Microsoft takes in every year, right? So you don't want to let loose of that, because once you become full time, you can have all the fun you want, right? So I think it's for me. I think there was a certain amount of pressure. There was a lot of hard work involved. I think how it got easier, Ruchika, is by two factors. One is time. Time eases out everything. So with time, I got to learn a lot of things. I got to become a better PM. The second thing is I just worked hard to understand what the systems are, what the processes are, what the progress is, where are we at, what do we need, so on and so forth, right? So I think these two factors, time and hard work, will automatically happen, right? So the syndrome will automatically reduce, right? But try to understand that if you give hard work, and that's where I actually failed and learned this over a period of time, if you go out and give a lot of hard work, but there's not enough time, you'll fail, right?
Yeah.
So no matter how much effort you put in corporate, you still need to give it some time, right? And that's why, corporate, let's say getting to the next level, or let's say getting promoted, is a longer stretch, right? Because there's so many processes that one needs to understand vis-a-vis an early stage company, which means that you got to understand a lot more in depth at a corporate vis-a-vis an early stage company, right? Not that early stage companies are not bad. They're also equally good. But I'm just saying in a corporate, things get more process oriented because there's so many people and there's so many processes in place, Ruchika. So I think time and hard work just help me get through.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just to add on to that, I think just it's more so about the fact that you need a certain maturity. A lot
Yes.
of students, and I've been interacting with someone who was very passionate about PM, and
Yeah.
he asked me a couple of questions, ma'am. How can I apply and all of that. And I think he went out and he got the relevant information, and I think he got the
Yeah.
relevant expertise. But then he came back saying that, ma'am, you know what? I think PM needs time because I need
Yeah.
to get. And I
Yeah.
told him, the fact of the matter is that if you get there and you fail in an organization like
Yeah.
Microsoft, is it worth it? Rather,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
create and build a solid foundation and then
Yeah.
get into something that there is no chance for you of, failing at all. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good point that you've actually brought up. And I'm glad that, we are
Yeah.
discussing all of this so openly. But
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah, just to add to that, Ruchika, I think a PM role, right, in the end of the day requires a certain degree of maturity, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think honestly, where I got that maturity is from early on, right? As early as 13, I started coding, I started problem solving, so on and so forth, right? Had I not been there, right, trust me, Ruchika, I probably wouldn't have opted for the PM role, right?
Yeah.
Because in the PM role, you need a form of communication, you need a form of, let's say, you need to be very data oriented, right? So I'll tell you this honestly. As a PM, I was someone who would just go in and say that why can't we just put this button on, right? Why is it so hard for you to understand that? Then now, if you ask me, hey Pratik, can we just put a search button here in Teams? I would be like, how many users actually want that? What is the UX paradigms, or how many users are actually searching for it? Being data driven, Ruchika, is one of the biggest things I've learned at Microsoft, which was not there before, right? So I'm just saying that, as you rightly said, maturity is required for a PM, but more than maturity, if you can exhibit that on a day-to-day basis, you'll be just fine.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks,
Yeah,
Pratik, for that.
yeah,
I think let's talk about internship. Now, I know that you
yeah.
have done one but two internships in Microsoft, and both of
Yeah,
these internships have been very, very diverse. You did a
yeah,
SWE internship, which was a
yeah,
summer internship for 2 months, and
yeah,
then you came
yeah,
back and you did PM internship. How
yeah.
different were both of these internships, and how did the SWE internship prepare you for the PM internship?
Yeah, so I think, Ruchir, just to clarify, I've done the PM internship twice
Oh,
PM internship twice in summer and for 6 months. But I think
okay.
what was different, right? What was very different, Ruchika, was the fact that in the 2 months, right, I went forward and did it with a group called the core service engineering, right? So just to throw some light in CSE, it is a B2B product, right? So you are going forward and building products to make lives of the people within Microsoft more better, right? And your solutions are empowering people within Microsoft to achieve more, and so on and so forth, right? Second internship that I did was with Teams, and I think everyone knows about Teams. It's a consumer-facing product that you can probably collaborate with people, chat, video calls, so on and so forth, right? But how those two were remarkably different, right? So I still remember CSE internship was a very nice experience, right? It was a lovely experience where you had matured set of product leaders, where you had probably the building a product for B2B enterprise. So you could actually empathize more, right? Because you're like, okay, I will empathize with the seller, so on and so forth, right? And 2 months was a lot of fun. So one thing I've learned in Microsoft is if you get hired as an intern, it's the best 2 months you're going to have, right? Ruchika and her team do everything in their capacity to make it like the best possible experience. And I think the only pressure you'll have is the PPO, but that's just there. But I think what was so different, Ruchika, is in 2 months, right? You have very limited time, right? How you slice your time, right? So you got to adapt to the system quick. You got to understand with the manager what are the requirements. You got a solution. You got to present in front of senior leadership, and then when you present it, they say that whether you're going to come back or not come back, right? So it was a lot of pressure, right? While 6 months is more relaxed, right? Because you don't have a PPO needle hanging over your head, right? Because you already got the PPO, it's more or less come. And I do know that for certain people, like I remember meeting couple of my friends in Peck or Punjab, engineering college, they have the PPO needle hanging on them after the 6 month internship. But I think 6 months gives you more time. Your manager also has enough time to talk to you, chill with you, be like, oh, this is the guy, he knows you by name, so on and so forth. 2 months doesn't give you that time, right? 2 months is like fast, fast, and fast, right? Call, deliver, 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 right? So I think the product was very different. It was a B2B product in 2 months, while it was a this thing, what do you call, consumer facing product in 6 months, right? And consumer facing product, oh man, the pressure is high, right? Because it's like, you got to get it delivered. It's critical. It's time critical. If you spoil one thing, Ruchika, it's like, oh my God, no, I cannot, right? Because people, the way they anticipate, like Words is covering you, Windows Central is covering you, saying that Teams, man, how can Teams launch such a pointless feature, right? So you cannot go forward and launch anything. You got to be very precise and very clear of what you're doing, and that's why probably B2C products are a little bit more competitive as well, right? Because they're more high stakes, to be honest, right? While I think, but both the experiences, I learned enough. I learned a ton, and but yeah, I think that was the experience overall, right? So in a nutshell, all that I'm saying is 2 months is something that you got to be on your feet, right? You got to work hard. You got to give your 130%, right? 6 months is something where you have to give probably 110 or 100%, right? Because you have time, right? We just spoke about hard work and time, right? But in 2 months, you don't have time. So you got to give more effort. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just to add on to what Pratik said about me and my team doing a good job in the internship program, I think I did not tell him to say that. It's just coming from him. So just to set the record straight.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think moving on to your job as a PM. I think you've been
Yeah.
a PM for about a year, a little more than a
Yeah.
year now. How has
Yeah.
it been? Do you want to
Yeah.
maybe share what does it take,
No.
to be a
Yeah.
PM? And this is coming from a lot of students. A lot of students want to know what does it take at the end of the day. So maybe something on that.
Yeah. Sure. So I'll tell you one thing, right? So let me demystify a lot of things, right, and a lot of misconceptions, right? So I think it's good to know that a lot of students want to aspire to be PMs and all of that, right? Now it's not mandatory for a PM to have an MBA, right? In all honesty, I don't have a lot of people within my team, within the cross team at Microsoft, also don't have an MBA, right? So if you do a head count at Microsoft, probably, I'm just taking a random number out of 1,000 people, you would say that there are at least 10 to 15% who don't have an MBA being a PM at Microsoft, right? Now, I think why is that probably, and Ruchika, you can give an answer, but the way I did my hypothesis is why is that India needs a PM? I mean, you need an MBA to be a PM, is I feel that people in India are very engineering driven, right? And what do I mean by that, right? So if you look at your early in career, you are going to an engineering college, you're coding, you're solving your tough problems, so on and so forth, right? To have a knack for a PM, right? So this is a very bottled answer, but the answer is you need to have business skills, UX skill sets, and engineering skill sets, right? And you should be at the epicenter of it, right? So what I see in most of the engineering students is they have a lot of technical skill sets, right? Amazing technical skill sets. They can code, they can do whatever it is, right? But business and UX, right? It's not that they don't have it; it's not polished enough, right? So
Yeah.
the assumption is that when you go get your MBA, in a top tier university in India, you usually get those skill sets polished, right? Of course, you don't get your UX skill sets polished, but at least you have two out of three, right? If not
Yeah.
one/three, right? Now, if you have 2/3, you pretty much can go forward and crack an interview, right? But because in an interview, typically they will not ask you to wireframe that much, right? Because usually we in and Ruchika would clarify that, but we also do have designers in Microsoft ITC, right? We have designers, we have PMs, and we have engineers, right? And design will do the designing for you. It's not that you have to sit and design, right? But you should have that design thinking skill set you should possess, right? So I think why in India is that why do you need an MBA? Because you need to have those skill sets of business, right? How did I go forward and get that? I got that through Imagine Cup, right? Where I could do a SWOT analysis, where I could probably go forward and say that, okay, this is the number, this is the business opportunity, this is my EBITDA margins, this is my PAT margins. I could probably go on and read out a financial report to you as well, right? And tell you probably which stock is performing well also, right? I still remember my interview with Microsoft, and I had to design an application, right? Something of that sort. And it was finance. And I knew that was testing my business skill set. But my interviewer was really happy. He was like, man, these are like what MBA terms, or do you know it? So I knew that if I had to go forward and become a PM at Microsoft, I had to possess those skill sets. So I think that's the answer to the first part that, why is that Microsoft India probably hires from MBA vis-a-vis Microsoft US hiring not from non-MBA, right? Um, and one more thing just to add there is the ratio to PM to engineers is also limited, right? So I have seen 1:7, 1:6, or 1:8, and sometimes it might go as high as 1:10 also, right? And the number of openings that we have, not through university, I'm talking about lateral openings in Microsoft for PMs, is far, far lesser compared to the number of openings we have for SWEs, right? While in US, because it's a headquarters, you have a lot of openings, you have a lot of requirements. That's why people want that requirement to be filled, and that's the reason probably you see why non MBA grads getting in as PMs there, right?
Yeah.
The second point that I would just like to add about what I do as a PM. So let me put it this way, right? In a short answer, like one, two, three, right? So the first thing that I do is in Microsoft, there is a mixture of program management and product management, right? So program management is going to include talking to partners, going forward and asking for completion dates, aligning stakeholders, aligning partners to go forward, get the right approach to ensure that we're doing the right thing, so on and so forth, right? That's the program management bucket, right? The second bucket is pure product management, right? Where you're probably going forward and understanding the customer's problems, pain points in the product, like Teams for my example. What do they want? What are the gaps? What is that you can go forward and do to make their lives better? You think about the problems, then you solution it, and then you deliver it to the customer, right? The third thing is strategy, right? And what do I mean by strategy, right? So this is not so much at my level, but what a general PM would do is how do you get another 200 million users for Teams, for example, right? What do you do? What are the growth hacks that you do? What do you ensure that you can do, or what should probably Microsoft Teams do next? Which segment should we get into? What are the users we want to impress, right? So, in a nutshell, if I had to like just cramp it up in all one bucket, right? So, you're going to look at the overview of the problem. You're going to dissect that problem into very, very small chunks. Then you probably go into, let's say, the mission statement of Microsoft. What goals are you chasing? Are you looking at acquisition, engagement, retention, monetization? Then you move on to probably user segmentation. Are you targeting office workers, healthcare workers, information workers, IT workers? Probably once you pick up that, then you probably start solutioning, and you look at metrics, right? And it's very important as a PM that you look at success metrics, right? How many people are clicking that button? Let me take an example, not from Microsoft, but from Google, right? In YouTube, for example, how many people are watching the video? How many minutes are being spent? How many clicks are you doing? How much revenue did we earn, right? All of that is synthesized and shown to us because we have to use that data to make the product better, right? So, and then you probably look at the funnel of metrics where you have users who landed on the page, users who clicked the video, who went forward and liked the video, disliked the video, how many commented, how many dropped off, how many uploaded videos, so on and so forth, right? So once you have this funnel of metrics, you go forward and make better informed product decisions to give a better product to the user. So yeah.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I think you brought up a good point about the skill set that is actually required. And yes, I totally echo you. I think the understanding is that as a PM, you need to have a good handholding of all of these things because you're working with different teams, you're working on
Yes.
different times, when you're working towards a one particular goal, and how you beautifully align all of that is so very
Yes.
important.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
also the fact that, and I won't say that, it's not happened. I think even in Microsoft,
Yeah.
there are, I think, as an organization, we are very open to people
Yeah.
moving internally, and it has happened that people,
Yes.
who are core,
Yeah.
hardcore engineers have moved into a
Yeah.
PM role and vice versa.
Yes.
So it's not
Yes.
like just because you kind of step into the organization with, into an engineering role, there is nothing stopping you to move and, move into a
Absolutely.
different role which actually, aligns to your passion and something that gives you energy at the end of the day. So that's just
Absolutely.
my 2 cents on the whole PM piece. But thank you so much,
Yeah.
Pratik. I think you answered it so beautifully, and I think even I would not
Yeah.
have been able to do justice to that.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of questions for you. The
Sure.
first question, and I'll probably put it up on the screen, is what are the
Yeah.
takeaways that you have had from Microsoft as a PM?
Sure. So I think 2 to 3 takeaways, right, is first understand the problem, right? I would be someone who would not understand the problem. I would be someone let's solution, right? So if I let's say that if I see there is probably a plant outside my house which is growing to my window every day, I would probably just go and cut it, right? That's solutioning, right? But trying to understand the root problem that because sunlight is flashing and that's the reason it's growing towards me probably will give me that indication that that's the problem. The solution isn't just cutting it every day, right? It'll still keep growing. So you're not addressing the problem, right? The problem then becomes okay, you have the sunlight flashing in that direction. Probably you move the plant, you probably move your window or something of that sort, right? So understand the problem in depth, right? The second takeaway is metrics and be very data driven, right? So I was just talking to my parents and my sister with respect to COVID. And, they said that, hey, Pratik, the vaccines don't work. And I was like, if you look at the ICMR data, the people who have taken Covaxin or Covishield, only 0.004% have had a breakthrough infection, or 0.003% have had a breakthrough infection. While others are telling that it's not working, they're going through their instincts. None of that matters, right? What is data saying? That's what matters, right? You've got to be very, very data driven, right? And Ruchika can emphasize here as well. I think not being data driven is walking on a very slippery slope. You're bound to fail, right? Because if you go forward through your instincts, I mean, it's good to go through your instincts, right? Points at which you don't have data, you have to go through your instincts, but just not having any amount of understanding about data and not having a data driven approach will lead to failure. And the last thing as a Microsoft PM that I've understood is whatever we do, right, should be tied back to our mission, right? And this is not only true for Microsoft, this is true for any company. You go to an early stage startup tomorrow, you go to a fintech company. If you are not doing something that is not aligning to the company's core mission, then you're not doing the right thing, at least for that company, because we empower people. So whatever we do in teams, it's increasing your productivity to empower you to get more focused time, probably to do something else, right? So you got to understand that whatever you do has to tie back to your mission of the company, and if it doesn't, then probably just skip it, right? It's not made for that company, right? It's made for some of the company. So those are my takeaways, Ruchika. Yeah.
Thanks, Pratik. So the next one is very interesting. How did you
Yeah.
research about Microsoft or any company to learn more about the PM role? Is it
Yeah.
directly, that you kind of got in touch with PMs, or was it a mix of
Yeah.
software engineers, design,
Sure.
UX? What was
Yeah, so that's
the
a
aim?
great question. So I'll tell you honestly, in my first year of engineering, I interned at Zomato, right? And in Zomato, I was in the Zomato order business, right? And trust me, I'm someone who's been very adaptable. I really don't care about what role is given, how much I'm paid. Probably, in Zomato, I was paid very little, right? And probably one can go see the salaries and all of that, but I was paid very little, right? But what mattered to me is I was learning enough, right? I actually went to restaurants, understood the business models, how restaurants make money. How do you probably go to Zomato? How does Zomato come home and still make money? I understood the core business of Zomato order, right? So I knew I was picking up business skill sets there, right? The second internship that I did at Deloitte was probably to, design an application for something. But what I learned from there in risk advisory is how do you see data? How do you see threats? How do you see identity and access management? How do you see UX UI? How can UX UI be finished, so that you can have a free Facebook page, but you can still log in, right? So I learned the core UX there. I learned about core business again there. Now, when I went forward and did all my Imagine Cup and all of that, I had a very strong understanding because of business, because I was in part of Zomato Order and Deloitte. I had a very good understanding of UX because I was in Deloitte, where we were creating applications to understand more. And of course, Imagine Cup helped, right? So I think what helped me is my internships, my experience, my reading. I would definitely recommend reading Medium articles, on product management, so on and so forth, and just getting my hands dirty into development by building a drug safe or an organ secure with my teammates. And that's what I learned very well. So I think those core skill sets help me to get where I am today.
Thanks. I think we'll take one more question, and this is an
Sure.
interesting one. Would
Yeah.
you suggest an MBA at a top Indian B school, or should I normally climb the engineering ladder to become a
Yeah.
PM or an engineering manager?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, right? And I think there is no right or wrong answer. Again, there is no right or wrong answer. You could do either, and probably either of them will probably get you successful. But as much as I have seen, right, if you want to stay in core engineering, then probably there is no room for an MBA, right? You probably will go on to become an engineering manager, director of engineering. Why do you want to do an MBA, right? MBA is going to give you business skill sets, right? Not engineering skill sets, right? But if you want to transition to a PM, and if you already have those skill sets like business, design, just the way I acquired it from some other place, right? So I didn't need an MBA to acquire those skill sets once again. So if you have acquired those skill sets, you have acquired those competencies, and you can exhibit that, then probably you don't need an MBA, right? But you probably need an MBA if you're not getting the right forum to learn those skill sets. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. All right, Pratik, I think that's it from
Yeah.
us. But before we go, I have a couple of questions. It's like
Sure.
a rapid fire round, so you
Yeah.
don't get time
Sure.
to think. You can just shoot the first
Sure.
thing that comes to your mind. Okay. So the
Sure.
first thing is, what's your comfort food during lockdown?
Yeah, so it's been Chinese actually. I love Chinese, and it's comfort food for me is definitely Chinese.
Nice. How do you tune out negativity? And I know there's so much happening right now, even as we speak. But what
Yeah.
is your go-to mantra when you don't want to kind of you just want to kind of come to peace with yourself and just kind of focus on what is there ahead? How do you do
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So I actually go back and see my 6, 7 year old photos to tell myself where was I and where have I got today. And there was so much hard work in the path of those 6, 7 years, wherever. And I tell
Yeah,
myself it's just going to be that. But in the end, you will be successful because all that hard work in the last 6, 7 years has got me where I have got.
that's a great one. Okay, the
Yeah.
one innovation that you look
Yeah.
forward to happening really soon, and it could be anything, not just in Microsoft,
Yeah.
but
I think I do want probably mRNA vaccines to go forward and habituate the market in terms of cancer, tumors, and in those diseases. I know mRNA has a lot of potential with COVID. I saw Pfizer and Moderna do a fantastic job. I probably hope that mRNA gets scoped out not only to COVID but to diseases like cancer and other fatal diseases. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that was my answer as well when I was, thinking
Yeah.
about this question. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
important that we focus on what's happening right now
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
flying cars or reaching Mars or
Yes.
whatever. So
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Share a funny instance that might have happened to you while working from home.
Yeah, so I think I still remember when my mom had come and my mom and I were discussing about something, and my mic was actually unmuted. And, I mean, I was not even like aware. And then I got a ping saying that, hey, you're unmuted. And I was like, oh my God. And I still remember that day I was like completely paralyzed. I was like, what did they hear? What did they hear? And from that day, the first thing that I check in my eyesight is mute, unmute, right? So I am like a master now of mute unmute, so like you can't
Yeah.
fool me anymore. But yeah, that was really I was completely like awestruck. I was like, what did they hear? What did they hear? And just took attacks on me. Yeah.
Probably your mom screaming at you to clean the room or something.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, work from home honestly has been in a while that way. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is if you were on an island and given an option
yeah,
to read just one book, what would that
yeah.
be and why?
Yeah, so I think I'm not such a great book lover, but I am someone who loves finance, and probably I would read There's this author called Saurabh Mukherjee, and he's written something about coffee can investing. So I probably would spend some time reading how investment works, how do you get rich without working too hard, so that I can come back whenever I have time and get richer overnight. Yeah,
It's a good one. Okay, so the last question is, and this is
yeah,
my favorite.
yeah.
Describe in one word what was going through your mind when Satya was standing next to you.
Oh man, one word is tough. But I would say that I was ecstatic. I knew I have worked hard to get here. And I was ecstatic and I was like, It's happening. Someone pinch me. But yeah, I think it was a very, very nice moment. So ecstatic is the answer. Yeah.
I can just imagine because I saw Satya
Yeah.
in Redmond. I
Yeah.
had been there
Yeah.
for some event, and
Yeah.
there was one big
Yeah.
event. I think it was an
Yeah.
intern event, and Satya had
Yeah.
come. And luckily,
Yeah.
I was on the first row, like
Yeah.
obviously 20 meters away. And I think I posted a picture of him as well on
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
post. But that itself gave me so much of excitement. I was
Yeah.
like, I thought I'd just faint. I was screaming and I was shouting, and I was
Yeah.
like, Satya
Yeah.
right there.
Yes.
He's the
Yes.
man. He's like the big bosses in
Yeah.
the house. Like.
True.
But I can imagine what you must have gone through. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
on that note, Pratik, thank you so much. And I really mean it. I think you've had an inspirational journey. You have shared so much with us. Thank you. And I'm sure that your journey will inspire so many. And I can't wait to kind of share this with the world. Um, but thank you. I think
No
in all
problem,
honesty,
Ruchika.
I'm
Yeah.
that not just me, but I think my team has been a part of this amazing journey that you
Yeah.
have had. And I think a big shout out to my wonderful team, Zubin, Vikram,
Yeah.
Ashish,
Yeah.
Sonia Chawla,
Yeah.
AK. I mean, I don't want to miss out on
Yeah.
anyone because they'll kill Angel, Sonia,
Yeah. They probably know me
Krishna,
now enough.
Razia.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
probably know me
So
now enough of how much I used to probably
yeah,
go forward and tell them. But I think thank you. I
yeah.
think honestly, I think it wouldn't have been possible without you folks. I think it's not about getting into Microsoft, but what you folks do is map us to the right teams. I think that's extremely crucial, right? You really want us to be successful. You check in, you do whatever you can in your capacity, and it just goes to show that why all of you should aspire to probably from university get into this beautiful company to just work out of this amazing, amazing company. But thank you so much for having me, Ruchika. I truly appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pratik. On that note, we will take your leave and we wish you the best of luck. Feel free to kind of like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'm sure I'll create some more content. And stay home, stay safe, and we will be back. Bye.